In the bustling heart of Ojaudan market, where traders shouted over one another and the scent of roasted corn mingled with that of fresh fish, there was a young man named Deli. He was known for his mischievous nature and his love for daring superstitions. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and shadows stretched long across the dusty market, Deli stood among his friends near the old shrine at the edge of the stalls. An old woman selling charms had once warned them, "Never bend down and look between your legs in the market after sunset. You will see what you are not meant to see." Deli, laughing, decided to test the legend. His friends cheered him on, daring him further. With a grin, he spread his legs, bent down, and peered between them. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the feet of people moving around. But then, the air grew cold. The chatter of the market became distant, muffled as if underwater. The flickering lanterns dimmed. And then, he saw them. Pale, hollow-eyed figures drifted through the crowd. Their feet barely touched the ground. Some had faces twisted in silent screams, others had mouths sewn shut with dark threads. They moved unnaturally, slow yet sudden, their hollow gazes locked onto Deli. A chill ran down his spine. His body stiffened. His friends, unaware of what he saw, continued laughing, until they noticed the horror on his face. "Deli, what is it?" one of them asked. Deli tried to stand upright, but his body refused to move. One of the ghosts, a tall, emaciated figure with blackened eyes, raised a skeletal hand and pointed at him. "You have seen us," it whispered, though its mouth never moved. Suddenly, the market was empty. The people were gone. The stalls had disappeared. Deli stood alone in a vast, shadowy void, surrounded by the ghosts. His heart pounded as the ghostly figures began to circle him. They chanted in a voice that was not a voice, a sound that scraped against his mind like rusted metal. "You have seen us," they repeated. "Now, you must join us." Deli screamed, but no sound came out. He tried to run, but his feet would not move. The tall ghost reached out and pressed a cold, claw-like hand against Deli's forehead. A terrible darkness swallowed him whole. The next morning, the market reopened as usual. Vendors set up their stalls. Buyers haggled. Life continued. But Deli was never seen again. His friends told the elders what had happened, but no one believed them. All that remained where he had stood was a patch of earth that had turned black, as if burned by something not of this world. The old woman at the shrine simply shook her head and whispered, "Some things are not meant to be seen." And from that day on, no one dared to bend down and look between their legs in Ojaudan market again. Days turned into weeks, and Deli's disappearance remained a mystery. His mother, Aya Deli, wept endlessly, visiting every shrine and oracle in search of answers. Some elders whispered that he had been taken by the spirits of the market, while others believed he had angered the gods. But one night, something strange happened. A trader, Baba Ojo, was the first to see it. As he set up his stall in the early morning hours, he noticed footprints in the dirt, barefoot, deep, and leading from the very spot where Deli had vanished. The market was still empty, yet it felt like someone had walked there just moments before. By noon, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed they had seen a shadow dart between the stalls, something that moved too fast, too silently, to be human. Others swore they heard faint whispers on the wind, calling a name. Deli. Deli. Then, on the 7th night after his disappearance, Aya Deli had a dream. In it, her son stood at the entrance of the market, his eyes hollow, his lips moving, but no words came out. He pointed toward the shrine at the market's edge. She awoke in a cold sweat. Without hesitation, she gathered the elders and told them what she had seen. That very night, a group of babalawos, powerful diviners, lit torches and went to the shrine. They chanted ancient incantations, calling upon the spirits of the land. The flames flickered violently, and the wind howled through the market. Then, a voice, faint, strained, echoed from the shadows. "Help me!" The elders gasped. The voice was unmistakably Deli's. But it did not come from the world of the living. One of the babalawos, an old man named Adagun, stepped forward and sprinkled white chalk on the ground. He muttered sacred words, calling forth the spirits of the market to reveal the truth. The earth trembled. The air turned bitterly cold. And then, from the darkness, a shape emerged. It was Deli. Or rather, what was left of him. His body was thin, almost skeletal, his skin ashen. His eyes were sunken, and his clothes were tattered. His mouth moved, struggling to form words. "They took me," he whispered. "I saw them, and they took me." The Babalawos worked quickly, chanting louder, trying to break the spirit's hold. But the shadows around Deli thickened, twisting, forming grotesque hands that clutched at him. The tall ghost from that fateful night appeared once more, its hollow eyes burning with anger. "He is ours," it declared. "He saw what was forbidden. He belongs to us now." Aya Deli fell to her knees, sobbing. "Please, my son. Come back." But Deli only shook his head. "Mama. I can't. They won't let me go." With one final, anguished cry, the spirits pulled him back into the darkness. The Babalawos tried to fight, but it was too late. The wind howled. The torches blew out. And Deli was gone forever. From that night on, Ojaudan Market was never the same. No one stayed past sunset. No one spoke of Deli. And no one, no matter how curious, ever dared to bend down and look between their legs again. For those who did, never returned. Years passed, and Deli's story became a whispered legend in Ojaudan. Parents warned their children, traders hurried to pack their goods before dusk, and the old shrine at the market's edge was left abandoned, its clay walls crumbling with time. But the spirits had not forgotten. Strange occurrences became common in the market. Goods would go missing overnight, only to be found scattered in strange patterns by morning. A trader once left a basket of yams locked away, only to return and find them rotten, covered in a dark, foul-smelling mold. And then there were the whispers. At night, those who passed too close to the market swore they could hear faint voices, distorted, stretched, calling from the darkness. Some even claimed to hear Deli's voice, still pleading for help, still trapped in the world of the dead. One night, a reckless young man named Kunnal, much like Deli had been, decided he was not afraid. He had heard the stories, but he laughed at them. "They are just tales to scare children," he scoffed. "What is there to fear?" Ignoring the warnings, he made a bet with his friends. "I will do it," he boasted. "I will go to the market at midnight and bend down to see if these ghosts truly exist." The others urged him to reconsider, but pride and curiosity had taken hold of Kunnal's heart. That night, armed with a lantern and a smirk, he walked into the empty market. The silence was unnerving, no crickets, no distant voices, just the sound of his own footsteps. He reached the exact spot where Deli had vanished, took a deep breath, and bent down between his legs. At first, nothing happened. Then, just as Deli had seen years ago, the world shifted. The market stalls disappeared. The air grew heavy and cold. Shadows began to move. And then he saw them. The ghosts. They hovered around him, their forms flickering between solid and transparent. Their faces twisted with pain and rage. And among them, Kunnal saw Deli, his eyes hollow, his mouth open in an endless, silent scream. The ghosts turned to Kunnal, their gazes locking onto him. "You have seen us," they whispered in unison. "Now, you must join us." Kunnal tried to run. He stumbled, falling to the ground. The spirits closed in. Cold hands gripped his arms, his legs, his throat. He screamed. The next morning, when traders arrived, there was no sign of Kunnal. Only his lantern remained, its flame still flickering weakly in the dawn light. From that day on, the elders of Ojaudan performed rituals at the market every year, sacrificing to the spirits to keep them appeased. But some nights, when the wind blew just right, people still heard the whispers. And everyone knew, somewhere beyond the veil of the living, Deli and Kunnal were still there, trapped forever, waiting for the next foolish soul who dared to look where they were never meant to see. Despite the yearly rituals, fear hung over Ojaudan Market like an unshakable curse. Traders spoke in hushed tones, avoiding the spot where Deli and Kunnal had vanished. Even the bravest of men refused to walk through the market at night. But darkness does not sleep forever. One fateful evening, a traveler named Tade arrived in the village. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a hardened face, his skin marked with the scars of many battles. He was a hunter, known for his defiance of spirits and his ability to break curses. Tade listened to the villagers' fears and scoffed. "I have faced spirits before," he said. "I have walked through forests where men dare not tread. If these ghosts are real, I will put them to rest. The elders warned him. The Babalawos begged him to reconsider. But Tade was stubborn. That night, armed with charms and a sharpened cutlass, he made his way to the haunted market. A small crowd gathered at a distance, watching in silence as he walked toward the forbidden spot. The wind whispered. The night air turned cold. With a slow breath, Tade bent down between his legs. For a moment, all was still. Then, darkness. The market was gone. The world around him stretched into an endless void, swirling with mist and shadows. And then, they came. Dozens of them. Pale, sunken-eyed figures drifted toward him, their whispers forming an eerie chant. And at the center stood Deli and Cunnel, their faces frozen in expressions of agony. Tade gritted his teeth, gripping his cutlass tightly. "You will not take me," he growled. He reached into his pouch, scattering sacred white chalk across the ground. "By the power of my fathers, I send you back to the land of the dead." The spirits shrieked, their voices piercing the void. The mist thickened, swirling violently around him. But the tall, emaciated ghost, the one that had taken Deli, stepped forward, untouched by the hunter's charms. It raised a long, bony finger. "You cannot break what is already bound," it whispered. "This is no curse. This is punishment." Tade's heart pounded. He had fought spirits before, but this was different. The weight of something ancient, something beyond mortal power, pressed against him. Then, the ground beneath him cracked. A cold, unseen force wrapped around his ankles, pulling him down. Tade swung his cutlass wildly, chanting the names of the gods for protection. The spirits screamed, recoiling, but they did not let go. And then, Deli stepped forward. His once hollow eyes filled with something new, recognition. "Help me," he whispered. Tade gasped. Deli's voice was no longer just an echo. It was real. Alive. Summoning all his strength, Tade pulled a small gourd from his satchel. It was filled with sacred water from the Ocean River, blessed by the most powerful priests he had ever met. With a swift motion, he smashed it against the ground. A blinding light erupted. The spirits howled as the void cracked apart. The mist dissolved. And suddenly, Tade was back. The market was as it had been before, empty and silent. The villagers watched from a distance, their eyes wide with shock. Tade staggered forward, gasping for breath. He turned back, expecting to see the spirits still lurking. But they were gone. And so was Deli. The ground where he had once stood was now just that, ground. No blackened soil, no lingering whispers. The weight that had haunted Ojaudan for years had lifted. The market was free. From that day on, the people no longer feared the setting sun. The market thrived once more, and no one disappeared again. But Tade never spoke of what he had seen. And sometimes, on the quietest of nights, when the wind whispered through the stalls, some claimed to hear a voice, soft, grateful, free. "Thank you." Years passed, and Ojaudan market flourished like never before. The curse was broken, and the people no longer feared the spirits of the night. Tade, the fearless hunter, had become a legend, his name spoken with reverence across the land. But Tade himself was never the same. Though he had freed the market from its haunting, he carried the memory of what he had seen, the endless void, the hollow eyes of the trapped souls, and the voice of Deli whispering in the wind. Some nights, when he closed his eyes, he could still hear it. "Thank you." One evening, as he sat outside his hut, watching the sun set over the village, an old woman approached him. She had a hunched back, her skin wrinkled with age, but her eyes were sharp and knowing. "You have done a great thing," she said. "But the spirits never truly leave. They only sleep, waiting for another foolish soul to wake them." Tade sighed. "Then let them sleep forever." The old woman nodded, but there was something in her gaze, a quiet warning, a truth left unspoken. And so, Ojaudan market remained peaceful. But the legend lived on. The elders told the tale to their children, warning them never to bend down and look between their legs after dark. Some laughed it off as just another old superstition. But those who knew the truth never dared to test it. And now, you know the story too. So, like, subscribe, and share, to save someone from making the same mistake.